Well, after 30 hours of sitting, waiting around, we finally got cars back out on track this afternoon for day 2 of Indianapolis 500 practice here on Wednesday at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Nathan Brown, your motorsports insider with the Indianapolis Star, here for today's edition of Pit Pass Live. As I mentioned, if you watched yesterday's episode, you know we barely got more than 20 minutes of green flag running on Tuesday morning, the opening day of Indy 500 practice that led to the rest of the morning and a large chunk of the afternoon waiting around before race officials called yesterday. And we were scheduled to have 2 additional hours of on-track running today, with things starting at 10 instead of 12. Well, if you were looking outside your windows, if you were here in central Indiana, you know very well that we didn't get on track at 10. We didn't get on track at 12. We didn't even get on track at 2. It was finally 3 o'clock. IndyCar officials and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway added an additional hour onto what we were planning for today, so the track was open from 3 until 7. We did have a handful of stoppages in there. Of those 4 hours, we got essentially 2 hours of green flag running, but after 23 minutes on day 1, 2 hours is not too bad. Scott McLaughlin tops the timing charts today with a speedy lap of 229.493 miles an hour. That is your fastest lap of the month so far, just barely edging out Scott Dixon's fast lap from Tuesday morning. A lot of Team Penske in this top 5, both of his teammates in there. Will Power, second fastest at 228.767. Third fastest, Colton Herta at 227.858. Joseph Newgarden in fourth at 227.675 miles an hour. And fifth fastest is Alexander Rossi, 227.484. Obviously, that's 4 Chevys in the top 5, a fairly even split of Hondas and Chevys when you go through that top 10. Not a whole lot to make in these early test days. Guys are doing so many different things, especially when we lose essentially a day. Yesterday, we lost an entire day of open testing, along with another half of it back in April. So guys, teams' run test plans are all across the board. Not a whole lot to make of who was on top, but you certainly would rather be on top than toward the bottom. The slow speeds that we saw today came from Agustin Canapino, just under 222 miles an hour, 221.628. He spoke on the Peacock broadcast after he finished his on-track running today and did note that he wasn't working a whole lot on pack running, was doing a lot in no-tow, not with a whole lot of traffic. So he did not seem concerned, although there was a little bit of a trend of those on the bottom. Again, don't know that we necessarily start making big observations yet, but if we start to see these same 5 cars or these same 3 teams toward the bottom once we get to Thursday, certainly on Fast Friday, if we do get cars on track, more on that in a minute, that becomes to be a bit of a concern when you know that we will be bumping 1 car from this 34 car field to get to 33. Those 5 cars at the bottom, both coin cars, both Foyt cars, and that number 78 Chevy of Agustin Canapino from Juncos Hollinger Racing. Takuma Sato topped the no-tow charts today, just a touch above 221 miles an hour. He was actually, of the 4 Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing cars, we learned on the Peacock broadcast this afternoon that he was essentially tabbed to solely focus on trying to get some qualifying simulation laps in. With 4 cars, you can do that a little bit. They really wanted Sato, a 2-time winner at this track, a storied veteran, to just focus on that, feel the car out. That was obviously where Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing ran into trouble last year. They just really want to get these cars solidly in the field, want to make sure that simulations that they had done over the last 12 months were showing on track what they were seeing off the track. He seemed fairly happy with that. We'll learn a little bit more about those qualifying speeds that team and the other 10 teams in the field has come Friday once we get a little bit of a boost. Schedule for the next couple days. Tomorrow is starting at 10 a.m. instead of noon to try to get a couple more hours than we have gotten over these last couple to make up for it. So we'll have 8 hours on track tomorrow if we have no rain. You start to get a little worried once we get into Friday. Things have gotten a little bit better from a forecast standpoint from what I've been seeing, but still a decent number of hours across the hourly forecast that I look at. We've got roughly a 50% chance of rain, and all you need is for one of those hours to be in the wrong 50%, and you lose a couple hours. That's obviously a very important day for these teams to get an additional boost of horsepower, essentially to experience what we're going to see on track in qualifying Saturday and Sunday, especially when you know that we're going to have bumping in store. A little factoid to kind of explain just how much we've been missing from on-track action here during April's 2-day open test, of which we got about half a day of, along with yesterday that was all but rained out, and today where we only got a couple hours of what was originally supposed to be 6, and yesterday afternoon scheduled to be 8 hours. We've gotten less than 6 hours of green track running here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Lots of teams scrambling just to try and get anything in. As I mentioned, you had a fairly large range of laps run today. Tom Blomqvist of Meyer Shank Racing ran over 100 laps, got over halfway to a race length at 105 laps. Down at the bottom, Marco Andretti only ran 15 laps. Now, keep in mind, teams are going back and forth between the garages. They'll go out, run a few laps, tinker with the car, go back, make some changes in the garage, come back out. I don't know if that's a super concerning thing. A little bit low, but again, without having talked to Marco or the Andretti team, don't know. He was, at least at the start of the day, fairly high up. Sounded like he was high up on the timing chart. Sounded like he was pretty happy with the performance of his car thus far. That's been a concern for Marco since he qualified on pole in 2020. Felt like he's suffered from what a lot of people call slow car syndrome, where car just doesn't quite either have what cars on the rest of the team have, or it's just a little missing a little something from an aerodynamic perspective, doesn't quite have that top speed. So even just to see Marco up there early is a strong sign. We talked to a handful of drivers this morning before we got on track. Those include Callum Ilott and Will Power. Callum, of course, back in the number 6 Chevrolet, coming off of his World Endurance Championship overall victory in the hypercar class with Hertz Team Joda at Spa over the weekend. It was great to see Callum back in IndyCar. He, of course, ran the first 2 races of the year in that number 6 car for Air McLaren. Has spent a couple race weekends recently in WEC. That's where he's running a full season campaign. We now know that this will be his only race in an IndyCar or last race in IndyCar for the rest of the year. But he's happy to be back, and with that win, I think might have some interesting decisions to make moving forward, whether he's going to come back to IndyCar, stay in World Endurance Championship. So here's a clip talking to him. We also got a chance to talk to Will Power just about what it takes to win this race. He won this race 6 years ago, back in 2018, after a lot of years coming just short, pain, suffering. This race means a lot to Will, and winning for a second time would mean even more. We have a lot of one-time winners in this race. Once you get to those 2, 3, and then, of course, the 4 four-time winners, that list gets pretty small. So here, again, a chance to talk to Callum Ilott, Will Power, and your fastest driver of the day, Scott McLaughlin.
It was great. I knew for a little bit of time what the situation was, and obviously the open test was a good start to that. We didn't get too many laps because of the weather, but it felt great while I got them. And then, starting yesterday, the car felt great and strong, and it's nice to work with all the teammates that I've got and a wealth of knowledge in different places. So, big thanks to the team for getting me on board, and NTT Data as well. Patience, consistency, build up. There's lots of little things to learn, and I've got good teammates to learn from. So, I'm not worried, and it's nice to know I have a great team to rely on to make the car fast as well.
I think the best one is to sort of bring that back a bit and just know that there's another race. Try to be calm about it. It can wear you down otherwise. The enormity of it, the pressure, the torque, the lead up, all the stuff. It's got harder as you didn't win. yeah, it got harder as you got those questions and the pressure mounted. First one, you sort of like just, wow, this is, you know, you sort of surprised at how big of a deal it is, you know. I was surprised how much attention it gets.
Yeah, it's it was a pretty busy day. Just the start of it was pretty slow, and then once we got out there, it was hustle and bustle. You know, just getting out there, and then finding some space, and traffic running was probably what we were working on. Race car feels really good, basically straight out of the truck. I mean, even yesterday when we had those limited running, like I felt really good there, just from a balance perspective, and then just had that confidence, you know, today. But yeah, ran some really good runs in pretty dirty air, deep in the pack, and was able to pass a few cars, and that's always a good sign.
Some quick nuggets before we wrap up. Now, again, I mentioned we talked to a handful of drivers at the morning driver bullpen. Some notes to come from that. Pato O'Ward has finally gotten his trophy from, quote-unquote, winning the season opener on the streets of St. Pete. We all know he finished second if you watched that race, but after the disqualification of race winner Joseph Newgarden in third place, finisher Scott McLaughlin due to Team Penske's push-to-pass scandal. Pato was awarded first place after a couple weeks of waiting. That trophy was placed in Arrow McLaren's team lounge here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Friday morning last week. Team walked in unexpectedly, found it there. The swap had been made by series officials. Not a whole lot of a chance to celebrate, but I know from talking to the team they are looking forward to getting that next win under their belts and then being able to celebrate two of them. That'll be a great party, I'm sure. Other notes from talking to Arrow McLaren drivers. Callum Ilott, after that win at the 6 Hours of Spa, got a chance to FaceTime none other than the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. Tom Brady is an investor/partner in Hertz Team Jota. Really cool for Callum to get to talk with Brady really quickly before he got on the road to drive back, I believe, to the UK, where he then flew here to get ready for practice and Indy 500 responsibilities starting on Tuesday yesterday. We learned a little bit more about Kyle Larson's schedule for the next 2 weeks. One interesting thing, as long as he qualifies for the race, of course, this weekend, if you're familiar with the 500 Festival Parade, part of the tradition of that is as we see some other acts, some marching bands, some important folks, celebrities that pass through, they count down the grid in reverse order. So we see the drivers on row 11, 3 abreast across the street in pace cars, and we go down the list until we get to that front row. Well, Kyle Larson, because he has NASCAR practice and qualifying for the Coke 600 later that day, just after 5 o'clock to do at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and with this parade starting around noon, IndyCar and the 500 Festival folks have given him the ability and the clearance to actually be the first driver introduced in line. So no matter where Kyle qualifies, as long as he qualifies, of course, he will be first in line at the parade. That gets him finished first, and then he will head to Team Hendrick's private plane, take him to Charlotte, He will practice, he will qualify, and then he will come back and get ready for a chaotic race day, hoping to run all 1,100 miles of the double at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Charlotte Motor Speedway. Some other things for Kyle this weekend. If he makes the Fast 12 and potentially even the Fast 6, he's one of the fastest 12 drivers on Saturday. He will potentially be running up to right around 6. Now, that all-star race that he will be running at North Wilkesboro that evening on Sunday the 19th starts at 8. His camp has mapped everything out minute by minute, and they've said that with that ending at 5:55, as long as he is in the air by 6:20, those should be able to be fine. That is, again, a helicopter from IMS to go to a plane that I think then would probably be a plane to a helicopter to get to North Wilkesboro and get into the car quickly. There's a little bit of wiggle room in that time, but not a whole lot. For race day, he needs to be out of here, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, in the air by 4:15 in order to get to Charlotte Motor Speedway by the green flag, which is scheduled for 6 p.m. Again, a little bit of wiggle room there, and I feel pretty confident that as long as the race doesn't go abnormally long, executives at Fox and officials at NASCAR who will be feeding off of this storyline will find a way to stall a little bit and get Kyle Larson in the field, be able to talk about him all evening long. Last year's race actually ended right at 4:15. We had those 3 red flags that you may remember. Pretty untraditional for a length of the race. It was right about 3.5 hours. You typically see them nowadays end in about 3 hours, sometimes even a little bit less. So we'll keep those things in mind as we see the rest of the month of May unfold for Kyle Larson, Arrow McLaren, and Team Hendrick. That's it for today, this edition of Pit Pass Live. Again, if you are coming out to the track, practice running starts at 10 a.m. tomorrow, runs until 6 p.m. Hope these clouds stay away. It finally cleared up a decent amount, enough for us to get a couple hours in here and there in between some misting and some rain showers in some corners of the track. Tomorrow looks pretty good. I get a little bit worried about Friday, but we'll talk about Friday more tomorrow on Thursday night's edition of Pit Pass Live. Thanks so much for watching. Continue following us along. We will have daily recaps each day. Cars are on track at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Got lots of content on IndyStar.com, features that I and others of my colleagues have been working on for months that I think you will really enjoy, along with covering everything that's going on track, the news off the track. Give IndyCar Weekly, my podcast with Stefan Wilson, a listen on all of your favorite podcast platforms. We chatted a lot about the Sancio Grand Prix along with the lead up to Indy 500 practice and qualifying when we taped that and posted that yesterday. Come back for tomorrow's edition, find out everything that happens in the 8 hours that we have on track in tomorrow's edition. For Pit Pass Live for Indy Star, I'm your motorsports insider, Nathan Brown.